In today's PC hardware market, where there is a huge shortage of parts, it seems almost impossible to build a gaming rig at a reasonable cost thanks to insane prices of GPUs. However, if you're still set on trying to find a reasonably priced gaming PC, then there is actually some hope for you. Let's discuss that in this video. Hey, if you enjoy content like this, drop a like, make sure to subscribe, and smash that bell so you never miss another video. Hey, what is going on guys? Danny here, welcome back to the channel and I hope you've all been doing well. In this video, we're going to be discussing how you can get yourself a gaming PC without having to go through paying exorbitant retail prices for a GPU or paying some scalper on websites like eBay. Unless you've been sleeping under a rock for the past 6 months, then you're most likely aware of the semiconductor shortage that's plaguing the industry. Along with that, with people spending more and more time at home due to lockdowns, working at home, and homeschooling, the demand for PC parts has skyrocketed. Graphics cards like the Nvidia RTX 3080, 3070, or AMD's RX 6800 XT are highly sought after. This brings us to the main problem of trying to build a gaming PC these days. That because an RTX 3080 costs like $2,000 when it should only be around $600 is making it pretty much impossible to build a gaming PC for what it actually should cost. It's just not reasonable or feasible unless you're someone swimming in a lot of cash. To give you guys an example, a practical scenario, let's head on over to PC Part Picker and just try to construct a decently high-end gaming PC. Let's say this is someone looking to play the latest titles at 1440p with ultra settings and also play some competitive Twitch shooters on a high refresh rate monitor. One of the first parts on the list is the CPU. Now, unless you're trying to go for the latest Ryzen 5000 series, especially the Ryzen 9 parts like the 5900X or 5950X, then expect to pay really high prices. However, you can find the 5800X and 5600X at MSRP nowadays. Ryzen 3000 CPUs are starting to fall again, and like I've been saying for the past couple of weeks, Intel's 10th gen parts have been heavily discounted and are offering really good performance per dollar. Right now, you can get a CPU like the 10600K for about $190 over at Micro Center. It's got 6 cores, 12 threads, is unlocked so you can do a bit of overclocking to squeeze out a bit more performance. So that's the CPU we'll be going with. Obviously, since it doesn't have a cooler, we'll need an aftermarket one, and I see that MSI has their Mag-Core 240mm AI liquid cooler. From what I've heard, it's a decent solution, should allow the CPU to really stretch its legs and provide headroom for some overclocking if the user desires. Now, for the motherboard, we don't really have to go for something super high-end with very beefy VRMs, or, something with lots of M.2 slots. Remember, this is just a gaming build, so just the essentials should be adequate, so the MSI Z490A Pro will fulfill that requirement for us. As for memory, I've gone with this 16GB DDR4 3200MHz kit from Corsair. Should provide some good performance for this build. As for storage, I recommend grabbing a decent Gen 3 NVMe SSD for your boot drive. They're just as cheap as SATA drives these days, so it's a no-brainer. So we've gone with the 500GB Western Digital Black SN750. It's a really solid drive with speeds of up to 3400 megabytes per second on the read, and I believe it's around 3000 megabytes per second on the write. As for the secondary drive, I went with a 1TB Crucial BX500. Should serve as a great fast mass storage drive. I probably could have saved a bit of money by going with a traditional hard drive, but I just feel like now with how cheap SSDs have become, you're better off going with that route and having those super fast loading times, especially considering how complex and large game engines have become these days. We'll skip the video card for now and come back to it later. For the case, we've gone with the Fantex Eclipse P360A. It's a nice looking mid-tower, comes with 2 RGB fans, will support our 240 rad, and of course has some room for more fans and tons of expansion, so you're covered for cooling. As for the power supply requirement, the amount of wattage that we need is greatly dependent on the GPU we choose, but for the one that I have in mind, a 650 watt unit should be able to provide ample power for the whole system, and does give the user a bit of headroom for overclocking or future expandability. Alright, so we've got pretty much everything we've needed except for the GPU. So far, nothing strikes me out of the ordinary. The prices for each of these components are where you'd expect them to be. The graphics card that I would include in a system like this is an RTX 3070. For 1440p, I believe it's the go-to GPU for playing modern AAA titles with ultra settings and high refresh rate gaming. Anyways, the RTX 3070 has an MSRP of $500, and if we decide to go for a partner model, that could go up, $50 or $80. Still, that's reasonable considering they'll be using bigger and beefier coolers with more RGB and all of that aesthetic. So I would expect this build with an RTX 3070 to land somewhere around $1,500. that is the price point I would expect to pay for a system like this, and I would find it totally reasonable. I would think it's justified. However, the problem is that when we go and try to look for an RTX 3070, they're not in stock, and when they are, you're going to have to pay greatly above MSRP. Just take a look at this, $1,400 for an RTX 3070. That's just absolutely absurd. So now we have a system that costs $2,300 when it should have only been $1,500. And this is the main issue that everyone is running into. For the rest of the components, we're good to go. Attaining everything else was doable and reasonably priced, and there were some decent deals out there as well. Power supplies have also risen a bit in price, but this depends on what kind of unit you're going for. If you're looking to get a 1000 watt power supply or greater, which most gamers don't even need, then yeah, you're gonna have to pay high prices for it due to a shortage. But like I said, most PC gamers don't need that kind of power supply with that much wattage unless you're running a multi-GPU mining setup. It's a non-issue for the most part. It's really just the damn graphics card that's ruining everything for us, and this doesn't pertain to just the RTX 3070. You will not even be able to find a reasonably priced alternative. Hey, who wants to pay almost $400 for a 1050 Ti, an entry-level graphics card from 5 years ago? 1660 Supers are going for $850, which is just absolutely insane. So at this point, you can forget about trying to build a gaming PC yourself because of this one problem, which doesn't seem like it's going to go away anytime soon or get any better. So you can't build a PC yourself, then what's the alternative? Buying a pre-built gaming PC from a reputable OEM or system integrator. I know that perhaps for the folks who religiously believe in building their PC themselves, this isn't their go-to option, but in these desperate times, what other choices do you even have? As of now, there are several reasons why buying a pre-built gaming PC just makes sense over trying to build one yourself. The biggest reason right now is that pre-built systems will cost significantly less than if you were to build one yourself. Now, I've been browsing around online, and occasionally on the BA PC Sales Canada subreddit, I'll see people posting deals from major OEMs like Dell or HP for pre-built systems that cost way less than if I was trying to build something with comparable specs, all because they aren't upcharging or raising the prices of their systems to take advantage of the GPU shortage. Both AMD and Nvidia, as well as their board partners, have a set amount of cards that they distribute out to system integrators and OEMs for implementing in these pre-built machines. They're not as heavily constrained as some of these retailers, which, are dealing with individual cards. They know that they'll have a set amount allocated for them so they can conduct their business as part of whatever contract or deal they made with the supplier. Hence, you can go to their website, oftentimes find a pre-configured system that has decent specs, is reasonably priced in today's market, and will actually be reliably in stock. Now, I'm not going to be going through a whole list of, pre-built PCs that's on the internet. I'll just show you guys a few examples of what I think are some decent machines that I found just doing, 10 to 15 minutes of research. But I highly urge you guys to do your own research into finding a reputable or reliable OEM or system integrator in your area or region, as the ones I'll be showing you guys may not be available in your region. One of the systems that I saw was from Dell. Yes, Dell, and I know the whole story about how they screwed over Linus by adding on all the extra unwanted warranty and tech protection in their invoice, but if you guys do your due diligence and make sure you go over the final bill of sale to ensure you know what you paid for, then you can end up with a decent system. This system here is part of their G5 lineup. It's got a 10700F, an RTX 3070, 16GB of RAM, although it's just single channel, which, annoys me. Like, why do OEMs shoot themselves in the foot by going with these dumb choices? Anyways, the rest of the specs seem decent as well. Maybe I would have went with a 600 watt power supply. You see, one of the biggest drawbacks you have to face when going with an OEM build is it's quite common to see a build that to the uninformed looks great on paper, but when you actually dig into it, there are some limitations and constraints you can run into that might pose a problem for you in the future. Oftentimes, these cases are using small, non-standard chassis with poor airflow and ventilation. They use proprietary motherboards with proprietary connectors. The power supplies, as we just saw, may be cutting it a bit too close in terms of wattage, and quality-wise wouldn't be anything spectacular. But at the end of the day, this system with an RTX 3070 is going to run you about 2,100 Canadian dollars, which if you were to purchase the 3070 and 10700F by themselves, that alone would already be about, 65 to 70% of your cost price of the system. But then you also have to purchase the rest of the components, and that can easily put you $300-400 over. So you may not end up with the best quality system in terms of, components or, build wise, but you do save quite a bit of money. And hey, it's in stock, and you get a system with a 3070, so gaming performance should still be overall excellent. Another system that I saw was this HP Omen 30L desktop PC. Now, I find that HP does a better job with the quality of their systems and overall service produced for their Omen lineup when compared to Dell. This system here is going for $2,000 USD, so it's a bit more expensive than where our custom build lands, but works out to be cheaper because we'd have to pay inflated prices for the GPU, whereas you're not dealing with that kind of charge here. Also, the specs on this machine are quite a bit better than the system we had put together. Here you're getting an i9 10850K, a blazing fast 10-core CPU, an RTX 3070, 16GB of DDR4 3200MHz memory, and dual channel. Hey, and they've also gone with the same boot drive as us, but instead they opted to go for a mass storage 2TB hard drive. Also, the power supply they're using is better too, a 750W platinum rated unit, so hey, go HP, you guys are definitely putting Dell to shame, that's for sure. On Best Buy Canada, there's an Asus Rockstrix GT15 gaming PC that it's in stock, goes for $1,800 and has decent specs, and since this is Asus, you can expect the quality of components and overall build to be above average. This system's got a 10700KF, 16GB of RAM, a 1TB SSD, and an RTX 2060 Super. So not as powerful as a system with an RTX 3070, but again, you try to look for an RTX 2060 Super on the used market, or the RTX 3060 new, which would be its modern day equivalent, and the cost of the GPU alone just eats up majority of the budget. Another good alternative you guys have is, say you don't want to go with a pre-built system from an OEM because of those limitations we discussed, then there are reputable system integrators like Ibuypower, CyberPower PC, and Origin PC, where these guys are essentially using the same off-the-shelf components that you or I would find at local PC hardware stores, assemble them together, including a bit of cost for labor, and then selling them to consumers. So these are completely upgradable systems, and they do offer a wide variety of customization options, so you can configure the build as you see fit. So those are just a few examples I've given you guys in the short 10 to 15 minutes of research I was doing. The bottom line is that in today's market, the prices of pre-built machines are significantly lower than going the custom route. Despite some of the OEM concerns you might have, it still just makes more sense because you're not being price gouged, and stuff will actually be in stock. You're not going to be sitting on your computer all day hitting F5 and refreshing web pages, or using bots to track down GPUs. Like I said, I'm sure if you went ahead and did some more research, you'd probably be able to find a system on a much better deal than what I just showed you. I just wanted to point out that for those who are still yearning for a gaming PC to play Warzone, Cyberpunk, or whatever it may be, that you still have an alternative available, because I so often hear from people these days that, they've just given up trying to build a gaming PC, or that they're just going to have to stick with their crap top for a few more years. But the good news is that now you don't have to.